And now it is my pleasure to introduce the participants in our co-keynote conversation as we engage in an interactive conversation on innovation, immigration, diversity, and inclusion. We're honored to have with us 3 of California's 10 big city mayors, as well as 3 startup CEOs who will really reflect the entrepreneurial perspective. Please join me in welcoming One Concern CEO and founder Ahmad Wani, San Francisco Mayor Ed Lee, Silicon Valley Bank CEO Greg Becker, San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo, Lark CEO Julia Hu, San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer, and our moderator, the editorial page editor for the San Jose Mercury News, Barbara Marshman.
Thank you, Geeta. We have a formidable panel here in intelligence and in size, so we are going to do our best here to get a discussion going. It's really a treat to have the mayors of the 3 top technology centers in California on the same stage. I didn't realize until recently that San Diego was way up there. And sometimes your competitors. You are all, for example, submitting proposals, if not precisely bids, Sam, for Amazon's new headquarters. So why don't we start with Mayor Faulconer, who is new here. Tell us what you're doing in San Diego to try to get those 50,000 jobs.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be back. You might have heard of 1 or 2 companies are bidding across the country. But yes, absolutely in San Diego. Now, a couple of things. I think besides from the physical location that we have, not only in downtown San Diego, and if you haven't been to San Diego and seen the tremendous transformation, particularly over the last 15 years, the urban core, the vibrancy, that is phenomenal. We also have a campus-like opportunity in Mission Valley. But I think more so than anything, what we're stressing is really, that combination that I think makes a lot of us special, which is 6 universities in San Diego, 80 research institutions. The fact that we have thousands of graduates that are coming out every year, and probably what I like to say is our special sauce, we work together. We collaborate. We have that environment in San Diego that I think makes us unique. I think that has helped grow our life sciences community, our wireless technology, all of the things that we're doing. You may have heard the climate's okay in San Diego. That's always decent, and we have some world-class craft beer. So if you put all of that together with that opportunity, that spirit, not just for Amazon, but all the other great companies that we're growing and starting up in San Diego, it's that part of our innovation economy that I think is so exciting, and we're on the cusp of great things and growing.
So you have more than one city involved in your bid, don't you?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, we did a bid as a region, and I think that was great for us. And it's we'll see. As I said, there's just 1 or 2 cities across the country that are working on it.
Yeah. Ed, you've done a regional bid as well, San Francisco. Want to explain that and also what you've got on the table? I forgot to ask Kevin.
Thank you, Barbara. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here, Silicon Valley Leadership Group, and thank Carl as well. We've done the same thing as Mayor Faulconer has indicated, and certainly Sam's going to talk about it. We did do a regional proposal for HQ2 for Amazon, but we knew our limitations as a city. So we also are working regionally. In fact, our proposal involved Oakland, Fremont, Concord, and Richmond to come together with us as a region so that we can align what campus ideas Amazon might have with our transportation and where the pipeline for housing is. These days, I think all of the talent that your companies want have a big challenge, and it's about affordable housing. We know that, we feel it. I'm trying to build 30 to 50,000 new units of housing in the city, but I'm complimented with the leadership that Sam's doing on his side, and I'm also supporting Mayor Liccardo's effort to get Amazon 2 here, just in case.
Thank you. Well, Sam, you've sort of laid out your position on this in an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. We've heard of them.
The other paper.
The other newspaper. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that approach and what San Jose is doing?
Sure, happy to tell you what we're doing, but as long as you don't tell any of the other cities. No, what I wrote in the Wall Street Journal is that while we're happy to invite Amazon to our city or to the Bay Area, we won't be offering any public subsidies. And that's because, by and large, public subsidies are a bad deal for taxpayers. Thank you. They're a bad deal for taxpayers, and I think ultimately it's a race to the bottom, and we'd like to encourage other cities to join us in that. But what we have to offer, I think, is what everyone in this room knows. I call it the 3 T's. It's talent, transportation infrastructure that we're building out now, and TANS, that is 300 days of sun a year. And that's important. So, we know we've got a lot of challenges. Ed put it well around affordable housing, certainly, but we've got the most talented workforce on the planet, and we've got transportation infrastructure that's being built out now. We just invested in an airport you heard about is now the fastest growing in the country. We're building out BART, high-speed rail, Caltrain. What's happening at Diridon Station could be transformational. So we're going to keep on making these investments for the entire community, and we think that'll be attractive to employers too.
Thank you. And just to clarify, Ed and Kevin, are you putting subsidies on the table?
Not at this point, but we said very clearly when it comes to economic development, how we work together, those are types of things that we want to talk about. It's very early, obviously, and a lot of work to do.
Okay. Ed?
No subsidies at all. I think we are aligned with Sam as well, and we think there's enough attraction for our Bay Area, because I think when you locate the kind of talent that Amazon would like to here, you get the associations or all the other talent. And these days, innovation really is about collaboration. It's not about one company doing something unique. It's about how that uniqueness adds to the whole diverse approach to solving medical issues, health issues. So this is, I think, the greatest time in our lifetimes, I think, when innovation is helping us solve the problems of the world.
Well, speaking of that, Greg, you see all this from a different perspective. You're serving, I guess, more than half of the innovation startups in the country as a bank, and most of the venture capital companies. There was a time when it seemed like most of the startups were apps we would find were fun on our phone, and that seems to be changing to a little more of a save the world approach. Are you seeing that?
Thanks, Barbara. So we have a great vantage point to see all these companies that are doing truly innovative things. And I do believe that there's bigger ideas that are being invested in and built on. Julie and I were talking earlier, what you guys are doing at Lark, pretty amazing, where it's coming up with an AI technology to really make nursing more scalable, more effective, better information. I mean, those companies like that, doing truly amazing things. We have another client in the East Bay that's doing drone sailboats. And what they're doing is they literally have these sailboats, drone technology. They're out in the middle of the ocean, mapping the entire ocean, saving the government tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. Or OpenGov that many places are using to help streamline governments and how they operate. So these are really big ideas that our clients are going after. And I wouldn't say not just our clients, but it's the innovation economy overall. And so that's what's exciting. We get to see that, and we get to participate in that. And clearly the Valley here is a great recipient of that.
Absolutely. And Julia, Lark had a very interesting origin, and you've really grown from there since the last time I saw you. Want to talk about that, what your original goal was and where it's taken you?
Sure. So it actually just started from my own personal childhood. I grew up with a chronic disease, and my dad really had to give up his day job to take care of me. And he spent years looking for the right care for me. Ended up finding not just a specialist, but actually a pediatrician instead, who worked with me like an uncle, over 12 years, completely changing my, diet, how I manage stress, how I manage pain, exercise, and he and my dad really were my 24/7 care team. billions of people are like me. They have chronic diseases, and I feel so blessed. And there's just not enough nurses out there to take care of chronic patients. So we decided to get together with some brilliant AI technologists to create an AI nurse. And after 6 years of R&D, we are now the first medically reimbursed AI that can manage chronic disease patients like a live healthcare professional. So we're working with major health plans now to manage chronic disease in a much more scalable way.
That's and Ahmad, your startup is around natural disaster and how to predict it and how to respond to it. But I think folks would like to hear the story of how you were inspired to go down this path.
Okay, so I'm an earthquake engineer. Started doing that because my hometown, Kashmir, suffered this earthquake in 2005, and we lost 70,000 lives. Came to Stanford to do my master's and PhD, and between my master's and PhD, I decided to go back home to get engaged, and this was August of 2014. The day I arrived, the very next morning, we had a flood, and several dams broke, and within 15 minutes, 3 floors of our house were underwater. And me and my family were stuck on the roof of our house waiting for response. And our neighbors had a 4-storied house, so they were throwing food at us. And that's how we survived. And we saw them, we saw several homes collapse, and their bodies were recovered in other countries. We were like in that situation for 7 days. And nobody came to rescue us, and luckily we survived. Now, on the 8th day, the water receded, and we walked out to safety. Now, in those 7 days, there were so many helicopters which were going over our heads, and I was trying to understand, how do they decide who needs to be rescued? Like, they just randomly go wherever they want to, and what kind of rescue? Like, does that person have special needs, and what? So initially, I thought that problem is restricted to the developing world and to floods. Flew back here, and I realized the same problem was seen in Napa, wherein we were going after 911 calls, which were not even coming from the worst affected areas, and that is a rehearsal of an actual event, an actual earthquake which could happen. So we started interdisciplinary research at Stanford between computer science and natural hazard modeling, and now help cities prioritize in those first few minutes, how do you save the maximum lives and where should you direct response? And finally, when we started to build all these fancy algorithms and push the barriers of AI and whatnot, while we were starting to work with partners and innovators like San Francisco's Department of Emergency Management, we realized we can definitely save another life if we improve the accuracy of our algorithms, but we can definitely save hundreds of lives before the disaster by preparedness and mitigation. And that's when we realized we can help cities build focused resilience.
Have you met Sam Liccardo?
We just met earlier. We just exchanged cards a few minutes ago.
Yeah. Thank you, Ahmad. That is, both of you and Julia are just amazing. The companies are amazing, and you are amazing. Looking at your company's websites, it's obviously you've developed a really diverse leadership team, executive team. A lot of companies here seem to have trouble doing this. And it always surprises us because we think we're so inclusive in Silicon Valley, but it doesn't always translate into leadership. Was this an intentional thing for you? Let's start with Julia. How did this happen?
Well, as a female Asian, I think that I really wanted to get a diverse founding team and company. I think that we all have such interesting ways to approach problems, and really luckily our company I really see is not just a straight tech company, but it's a blend of science, design, and technology. So we really tried to build a diverse population. And several of my founding team members are immigrants. My parents are immigrants who fled from China and the communist regime. And I think that we're all driven to a more idealistic state. So, yeah.
That's great. So it was purposeful. Ahmad.
Okay, so I'm an immigrant. My co-founder, Nicole, is also an immigrant. And many of the tech companies, the large tech companies which have caused these tech revolutions, their CEOs and co-founders are immigrants. But and then the other perspective is, that disaster resilience requires people from different expertise to come together, right? So we have experts from emergency management, from who have led city governments, and AI experts and hazard modelers and all these people. But I mean, to be honest, we didn't really seek out to look for diversity or something. All we did was, to be honest, we were just looking for very smart people who believe in our vision and our mission, and that was our main goal. And we were like, we don't want to discriminate against, of course, anybody. And right now, 40% of our workforce is women, and 60% are people of color. And we were just looking for the right cultural and the right skill fit.
Interesting. Greg, you deal with a lot of startups and major companies. Is it a priority for most of the folks you deal with, and how can you tell if it's a priority?
Yeah, so obviously it's getting a lot more attention, which I actually think is probably the only positive thing that is coming out of all the noise that we're hearing about. And it's just noise, it's real issues that is actually being brought up. And so I actually think that is the only positive that we can look at that comes out of that. But it is becoming much more top of mind. It's more top of mind for our clients. It's more top of mind for the investor community that we participate in and we're part of as well. And it's becoming more top of mind for us. So maybe I'll start with what we're doing. We've looked at, I guess, started about 5 years ago, and we look at just how diverse we are as a company. And in some ways, you can look at the numbers, and the numbers actually hide part of the issue. We have balanced gender diversity at the bank, so it's 50-50 male-female. But when you look at it, there's certain things that weren't actually as balanced. The higher you went up in the company, the less diverse it became. And so we started to dig into that and really start to set not short-term goals, but long-term goals that we wanted to change over time, that we actually track inside the company. We talk about it amongst all our employees so that they know what our goal is. We do unconscious bias training across the organization. We have inclusion and diversity task force. And most recently, because we believe you have to start at the earliest age and create a diverse opportunity or employment opportunities for different areas, different geographies, we're partnering with Genesis Works in Europe to bring interns into the organization at their ground level from diverse backgrounds. So my point is, it can't be just one thing. It actually has to be a broad-based solution. Now, when I think about our clients, again, they're coming up with this being more top of mind, which is a really positive thing. Now, what some of them struggle with is how they deal with that. As you said, Ahmad, they're focused on building their business, and many of them aren't focused on the diversity because some of them are really looking at how do they survive the next week, the next month. They're saying, I want the best people. They're not looking at how diverse it needs to be. So I think we have to be a little bit empathetic to the situation they're in. That being said, we all have to encourage them, to support them, to be more open-minded, to look as how important diversity is to help improve their success rate. So we need to support them in that thinking, but I also think we need to be empathetic to the situations that many of them are in.
Yeah, I would like to say, though, it's interesting that what we found is, it's really about the pipeline, like you guys both said, right? And we need to encourage the pipeline to grow in a more balanced position. And I think we've just been pretty lucky because as a female CEO, I feel like our pipeline actually ends up being, actually more female engineers are applying. So I really think that part of the pipeline situation can be solved by your company and your portfolio companies elevating females to key key public roles.
I agree. One of the things that we're supporting, and I, again, encourage more people to, there's an organization that basically helps to get women more exposure to boards, private boards as well, because most public boards, they want public board experience, and you can't get that until you actually have board experience. And so, again, I think we all have a role to play in helping improve that diversity issue that many of us are grappling with.
So there may be a little more public pressure on public agencies, on government, and let's pull our mayors back in here. Sam, it's my impression that since Susan Hammer was mayor in the 1990s, she really opened up city employment, that San Jose was pretty good at balancing and at reflecting its community. I'm wondering, since all the layoffs and rebuilding, where are we now, and how does the city look?
Yeah, we have had strong tradition diversity in the city. We had the first elected female mayor of any major city in the country back in the 1970s, and Jan Gray Hayes, first Asian American mayor of any major city. And so we're very proud of that. As we look across the organization, among all the department heads, half are women. Leaders of the key departments, many of the key departments are people of color: police, fire, planning, parks. And so I think we know we need to do more, but I think the good news is, at least in the leadership positions, we're seeing a lot of good progress. And my own team of the 8 direct reports or so I have, they're the highest paid folks in my own mayor's office. Half are women of color. I should note, for Kevin's benefit, 3 of the 8 are Republicans, and that counts as diversity in the Bay Area. So.
So Kevin, I do think of San Diego as being a little more conservative than the Bay Area. Is there the same attention toward diversity? Is it important to your
I'll give
city?
Sam some more.
Yeah.
Here it is. Look, we're proud to be one of the most diverse cities in the country, 8th largest city. It's part of who we are, or particularly our relationship in our Latino community and our proximity to Mexico. And I'm going to go back to what some of our colleagues were just saying. To be successful, you do have to measure, and I think that's something that we all share. Not only with our own teams, as Sam just talked about, my own team of my 30 folks. My chief of staff is a female. Half of my folks are either female or non-white. My very first day in office, we needed to make some changes in the police department three years ago. My very first day, I hired the first female police chief in the history of San Diego, Shelley Zimmerman, who's a little biased, but I think she's one of the best chiefs in the country right now. Crime at an all-time low, and in other leadership positions. I've really made recruitment in both our police department and our fire rescue department a huge focus to make sure that we are the most diverse of those in our public safety. But back to measuring it, one of the things that we do is our Civil Service Commission puts out a report every single year that measures how are we doing in every single department. So you can manage to it, you can measure, but it says, how are we doing? And the good news is, at least for San Diego, particularly over the last 5 years, even 2 years before I was elected to mayor, we are increasing those numbers every single year in terms of diversity. So I think it has to be purposeful. I think it does have to be intentional. I think we have to measure it. But we want the best and the brightest and the most diverse city workforce. We have 11,000 in the city of San Diego that represents who we are, and that's the fabric of our city.
Neat. Ed, it's my perception, looking north, that San Francisco has a lot of pressures on it from various forces on hiring and everything else. How do you deal with all that?
Well, not only making strong efforts, I think everybody in public service realizes government is about serving the public. And when our public has a lot of immigrants, a lot of minority communities, cultural competence becomes the mandate for every civil servant. And in doing so, you got to recognize some realities. For the first time in the history of San Francisco, the majority of elected members of the Board of Supervisors are women, 6 out of 11. And the board president, she's a strong woman, London Breed. So that's a reality. 60% of my mayor's staff are women. My own election is a history in the history of San Francisco, where they used to have laws that prevented people from China from owning property. So you kind of realize this is not only history, it's cultural competence that will make an effective city government. I happen to have a number of women heading up some very important departments. One's here, Department of Emergency Management, Ann Conenberg, but I've got a city administrator, I got a fire chief, I got director of the port, I have the Department of Environment, Director of Public Health, all female, all making sure that not only their diversity is reflected, but that the way they carry out their jobs and their duties is to impact the community in the most positive way. And these days, government is about building trust. We cannot do anything effective unless we have that trust relationship. And you got to have trust go a long ways, and I'm training all of the staff, whether they're led by female or male, that they've got to end discrimination for women across the board. We're members of the UN Convention Against All Forms of Discrimination. I remember signing that document in one of the first department heads, and I realized discrimination isn't just within the boundaries of the city. You got to figure out on these large events what entities are coming into the city like Super Bowl 50 and trying to accomplish things like human trafficking, and how to stop and intercede that, how to train hotel workers and everyone else about implicit bias, about bias up the chain. It's not just pressure. In order to be an effective government, we have to do better than even the private sector.
Great. Well, we're talking about diversity, but really the underlying issue here, particularly from a government perspective, is immigration and the role immigrants have played in making this country and this economy great, if I may say so. Ahmad, you've mentioned where you're from. What made you decide to come to America and start a business in America?
I think America is the land of opportunity, and I knew it from day one that I wanted to pursue my passion for earthquake engineering and actually solve the problem for myself, which I had seen in 2005. So that's why I really came. And when I finally came to Stanford, met my professor, it was not just limited to my initial scope, which was being an academic and teaching. But Stanford and the community there and my homestay hosts there, they pushed me. They were like, no, you can actually create a difference and save lives. And when we went to our customers or potential customers, they welcomed us with open arms, even though they had to make sense of that Python code, which we had at that point. And so everybody really welcomed us. And now we are here, and so America has been phenomenally welcoming to me.
That's wonderful. Julia, you're second-generation Chinese American, and I think your founding team includes folks born in other countries. Can you tell us about them and the difference they make in your company because of their different cultural backgrounds?
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, we have a pretty diverse engineering team and tech team and leadership team. I think we've all talked here, which is, cultural competence is really important. As a company, as we're building a global company, it was really important for us to make sure that we got representative folks with different perspectives so that we could create an AI nurse that could not only help Americans, but Latinos and Chinese people and Indians and so forth. So we brought on, we have a health committee with faculty from Harvard and Stanford of variety of race, gender, and it's really helped us create the foundational AI for a global company. So I think it makes a big difference, and I also think that internally we've tried to create policies that are just more, actually more appealing to people who are not just diverse in gender or race, but also just interests in life. So so some folks, we think creativity is huge, and so we have folks who love dance and modern dance, and so we've created a flexible work schedule where they can go dance in the mornings on Thursdays, or a mother of two, even though we're a startup and we're all here until 8 or 9 o'clock, she needs to go back at 2:30 to be with her kids. So we really try to create structural policies such that diversity can really flourish.
So I have some bad news that Carl just delivered. We have a 2-minute warning here. Given the news of the past few weeks, I just don't think we can end a discussion of inclusion and diversity without chatting about Harvey Weinstein, Mark Halperin, Bill O'Reilly, the California State Capitol, all of the reports coming out about sexual harassment. Let me just talk to Julia for a second. Guys, you just stand down for a minute, okay? Julia, were you surprised at this outpouring?
It's really heartbreaking. When I read about, it really started with Bill Cosby, and it's sad and scary that it takes really a few really, really brave first voices to then allow for this more safe environment to talk about these issues.
Yeah. So in your generation, which is different from my generation, do you think the problems are the same, or?
Well, so before all of this happened, I would have said, no, we've gone beyond that. And I've always been focused as as kind of a millennial feminist. I think I'm past the millennial age. So, but
Close enough.
As a kind of newer generation feminist, I have been really focused on subconscious bias and these more subconscious issues around gender. But it's shocking to see that it's not only subconscious; it's very much fully conscious.
Would any of the gentlemen like to comment? Ahmad.
So I can talk about sort of what we have been thinking about this. So clearly the no tolerance or zero tolerance or whatever policy is clearly not working, right? Yeah. It's existed from a long time. So, what we decided to do, and we are a very culturally strong company. What we started with was, our cultural values are not like innovation or something. They are like fully concrete values which can be measured and are commutable. You can get hired or fired if you don't adhere to that value, irrespective of your job performance. Mm-hmm. And then we wanted to somehow fix, A, the power dynamic, and B, the subconscious bias, as Julia was pointing out. And by making sure that we communicate very clearly that there is no hierarchy in the cultural team, from the culture side, there is hierarchy in the job function for efficiency. So, and then making sure that there is a very easy way for anybody in the company, whether they notice low-level dissonance or any actual event, they can communicate that to a rotating board, which can then take immediate action.
Thank you. Sam, did you want to say something?
Oh, I just was thinking, as I was hearing the discussion, it's been 26 years since Anita Hill, and you'd like to believe we've moved a little further, faster than we have. But I saw an interesting statistic in yesterday's Mercury news that 75% of HR directors are women. Obviously, in the CEO and the other C-level jobs, that is more than inverted. And it seems to me there is something fundamentally to the fact that the conversation is not always traveling well from HR to the top. And that's what we got to fix. And maybe there needs to be alternative routes. You got to go around the CEO to the board. Obviously, you need more diversity all the way up the chain.
Thank you all so much. It's been a terrific panel.
I want to thank Barbara Marshman and our panel, and please stay seated on stage. As Ben Minicucci of Alaska Airlines mentioned at the beginning, we have a special reward for one person with us today, and you must be present. To announce the winner of that drawing for 2 round-trip Alaska Airline or Virgin America Airline tickets, please welcome to the stage Vice President of Alaska Airlines, Annabelle Chang.
Hello, everyone. So everyone's a winner in here, because if you take a look in your Alaska bag, you've got a discount card that can take you to Mexico, New Orleans, Palm Springs this winter. So have fun, eat your heart out. Now here's for the fun part. Everyone take your arm, stretch it up in the air. All right, now reach under your chair, and there is one lucky winner, and if the person sitting next to you isn't there, check under their chair. All right, someone has to have it. And if you're the winner, stand up and wave.
Check your neighboring chairs.
All right, stay there. We'll come and get you. Thank you.
Awesome. As that person makes themselves to the stage, Annabelle, why don't you stay here? Annabelle, you stay here. As that person makes their direction to the stage, please join me in welcoming the market president for Bank of America on our executive board and the treasurer of our board of directors, Raquel Gonzalez.
Thank you, Carl. We came together today to celebrate diversity and inclusion as well as innovation. But by celebrating, we're in no way implying that our work to strengthen diversity in Silicon Valley across all fronts is done. It's nowhere complete. In fact, far from it. At the leadership group, a deeper commitment to diversity drives much of the work that we do. It's most apparent in our education and workforce efforts, where we focus on cradle-through-career policies and programs. It's central to our work on affordable housing for everyone in our region. It's key to our commitment to public transit, better roads, and reduced traffic. It's essential to our work on energy and environmental improvements, and it is part of our holistic view on healthcare. It remains timeless on how we view tax policy and fairness from all levels of government. And it is core to the commitment that we have made through our Silicon Valley Leadership Group Foundation, through the Applied Materials Silicon Valley Turkey Trot, the Lamb Research Hearts and Souls Run, and our Santa Run sponsored by Google. So let's celebrate the progress that we've made, but let's stay very committed to greater and consistent progress for gender, ethnic, age, cultural, and all forms of diversity, not just today, but into the future. Our valley is more successful and sustainable when we have the wisdom to bring diverse voices and visions to the table. So before you leave today, meet a few more people. Our valley and all of us will be better for it. Thank you, and we're officially adjourned.
One more, yes, you can stay. As we adjourn, and we do encourage you to stay and linger, we want to thank two leaders on our team that made today possible. If you enjoyed today, please join me in thanking and recognizing Shannon Johnson and Megan White. Shannon and Megan. Are probably running around outside making sure everything is working, but we have small gifts for each of you. We're going to ask our recipients of the Spirit of Silicon Valley Lifetime Achievement Award and Carol Bartz to come here for our photographer who will be joining us from across the room. Will you join me again in thanking all of our teammates at the leadership group who made today possible? Friends and colleagues, thank you for making this valley and region a better place. We are adjourned.